Hey everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. Today in this episode, we take a slight deviation from the typical backpacking, through hiking, ultra running, fast packing narrative that we often are talking about. And we explore a new sport and a new category of way to explore essentially the backcountry and to get out there and disconnect from the daily and get into the wilderness a little bit. So I interviewed David Moondog Roop. And David is a thru-skater. Thru-skating is probably something you're not as familiar with. I know I wasn't very familiar with it until this podcast opportunity came up. But it's a really interesting sport. It essentially parallels through hiking and backpacking, but it uses a skateboard or longboard for travel. Moondog is among the pioneers for this new way of outdoor travel, completing notable thru-skates such as a 24-day, 492-mile thru-skate of New Mexico and a skate on the 444-mile Natchez Trace Parkway, as well as a trip that we just talked about in the podcast down in Puerto Rico. So he's done some amazing things. There's also the Florida Trail, which he's thru-skated, and we kind of dabble talking about some of these, but really we just get into the nitty-gritty of what the heck is thru-skating, what makes it hard, what makes it different, and who would be drawn to this, because there are some absolute pulls to want to go try this and to see the world in this way. It's going to be different. You're going to see things different. You're going to have different opportunities and different challenges. And so we really dive into those, and it's fun to learn more about this. And if nothing else, even if you're like, I will never skateboard in my life, there will be some solid takeaways, in my opinion, from this of just personalizing your adventures. So join with me as I bring on David Moondog Roop to the podcast, and we discuss thru-skating. All right, Moondog, I'm super excited to have you on the podcast today. And I wanted to start off with a little bit maybe different of a question, sideways of a question. I think most people would probably start like typically I'm going to start off a podcast and be like, what got you into this? But when I was researching thru-skating, the thing that really came to mind is just how physically brutal is this on your body? Because to me, I'm not a skater. And so if I was skating and pushing all day long and you're kind of bending one leg and pushing with the other and there's lots of different motions here. And to me, it seems epically brutal to thru-skate. Coasting down a hill or something like that seems nice, but there's got to be a lot of pushing when you're going 500 miles on a road. So how brutal is it actually to thru-skate?
I would actually compare it physicality-wise almost to thru-hiking. Basically, kind of at the end of the day, your legs, your core, everything hurts. It's just a different set of muscles that hurts when you're thru-skating versus thru-hiking. That being said, if you fall while you're hiking, it's going to hurt a little bit. If you fall while you're skating, it's probably going to hurt a lot.
Yeah. Have you had some pretty serious falls?
I actually just had a pretty serious fall. I was in Puerto Rico about a month and a half ago, and it was raining. I was going downhill, and generally when we're going downhill in the rain, you slow it down a little bit. And I was going faster than I knew I should. And whenever I got to this one spot where there was a little bit of mud in the road, and it was just slick enough. And the second I hit it, I was like, oh, I'm going down. And then, half a second later, I just crashed right into it. And so that was pretty bad. I was wearing my rain jacket, so, tore straight through that thing. It just dissolved like toilet paper.
Yeah. I want to get into gear at some point and see kind of differences there, but I imagine you're trying to keep things light, just like a thru-hiker or a backpacker. But so you're just hitting pavement at how fast?
That time I was probably going somewhere between 20 and 22 miles an hour, which is so dumb. I knew I was going way too fast for it, for there being rain. And I was just like, oh, I'll just wing it. And then as I was going down, I was like, oh, you deserve this a little bit.
Any lasting injury from that, or?
Not really. It just scraped me up, and rain jacket, unfortunately, took the brunt of it, I would say.
Yeah. How long did that? I stalked you a little bit on Instagram, and curious how long and how far that through skate was that you just got back from.
Yeah, so it ended up taking me exactly 3 weeks. I haven't actually calculated the exact mileage, but I think it was about 300 miles all the way around the island. And so I started in Old San Juan, and basically just kind of skated along the ocean side for almost the whole way.
And sounded like the streets there weren't maybe as accommodating as other skates that you've done.
I'm not huge on doing research. I don't want to know exactly what to expect before I get there. And this turned out to be a pretty big mistake in Puerto Rico. I should have done just a little research. I knew that the roads were going to be rough and that traffic was going to be hectic. They drive a little bit more aggressively there than we do here in the States or inside the Cono. And so I knew to expect that. What I didn't expect was that the roads are only about a car and a half length wide, and there are tons of blind curves. And so actually, my original plan was just to kind of go towards what looked interesting. And it was like the third or fourth day in, I realized that I had to stick closer to the coastline because as I was going up and down the mountains, it was just blind corner after blind corner. And cars were just speeding through, and there wasn't enough room for both of us. And so I had to adjust there pretty early on.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been to Puerto Rico, but I can imagine that they're probably not opposed to like nudging you off the road. Basically, like they're squeezing gaps, they're shooting gaps, they're using their horns a lot. Typically, I imagine it was like a bit hectic and a bit intense. But tell me some of the highlights. I mean, this sounds like a pretty epic adventure. Just literally skating around, hitting beaches, being on the coastline like that. So what was some of the highlights of that trip for you?
Probably the biggest one was just almost every single night was sleeping on the beach. And because of where I was skating through, it was almost remote every single night. So you're kind of like on your own private beach, hanging out in the tent, swimming in the ocean every night. And which has its pros and cons. It was also hot every night, and so like the first night in, I stayed a little bit more inland, and I was so sweaty. I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do this, and I didn't hardly sleep that night. And so that was another reason for kind of hugging the coastline. Also, just kind of one of the things is I am not bilingual. I only speak English. And once you get outside of the main tourist areas, most people there just speak Spanish. And so while I was going through, I really had like language barriers. And it's nice to just kind of be an outsider in that aspect.
Yeah.
And have to figure it out.
Yeah, for travel, I think language is something that holds so many people up from actually getting out there and trying it, right? Did you end up using or downloading like Google Translate or anything, trying that?
I live by it. Okay. Actually, it's amazing that we live in a time where we have that. You used to thumb through the book. Now you could just type it out and show it to the person. You can communicate quite easily.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I always like it is a hesitation and it's difficult, but it's so possible in the day and age we live in, right? To just go and give it a shot and just you'll figure it out. And generally people are pretty helpful. And if one person isn't, then there's two other that are. So
One of the biggest problems that I noticed with the language barrier is what I would be attempting to order food-wise was very rarely what I actually got. So that was like the only language hang-up. So I just kind of got used to being surprised with what I was going to eat and the quantity of what I was going to eat.
Did you get some good food or was it pretty plain down there?
To be honest, I was actually quite disappointed with the food. Actually, 2 weeks in, made a joke. It just kind of ran with it that the national bird of Puerto Rico is overcooked chicken. And that's kind of just what I started to anticipate was just that they just like to cook food a little bit more thoroughly than we do here, which ended up being kind of my downfall. I ended up getting food poisoning while
Oh,
I was there. And so, it happens.
yeah, yeah, that is never fun. Yeah, it's not. We have a team member here at Outdoor Vitals that lived in the DR,
Hmm.
and it, he doesn't talk that highly of the food there either. Kind of just very bland, rice and beans a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just such a poor country that even like it didn't even sound like they're could afford to have chicken or something like that at a lot of these meals. So yeah, it's interesting because I feel like one of the things you look forward to the most when you're traveling is food, but yeah, wherever you're going dictates that, right?
It does. I actually have this theory about this. A lot of countries that things were very poor and the kind of like living situation wasn't great, they tend to have fantastic food. And I think that it's one of those things like if what's around you isn't great, you choose to make food better. And it's just an improvement in your life. And in Puerto Rico, things aren't bad, but they're pretty good. And so they didn't like have to gravitate towards, more interesting flavors societally, and probably the same in the DR. But I'm not great at history, so I could just, be talking out my rear right now.
No, I can see that for sure. One of the things that I see a lot, right, is that like when you're in a poorer country, a lot of times maybe they can't afford sugar, so they use spice and everything, right? It's
Oh,
like
right.
this:
Yeah.
if you can't have sugar, then you have spice. I wish that was more rampant in the United States, like because like you have to have flavor. Like people don't want bland food, right? So you're either adding sugar or adding spice. And in the U.S., it feels like we just add sugar to everything, right? And so definitely when I'm cooking and whatnot, I try to go the other way and like add spice just because it's I don't know. I like it, right? And if you get used to it, then you get used to it. And especially coming off of like Christmas and stuff, I feel like I start to like develop these sugar dependencies, and I have to do like a solid week or something of just like no sugar to like help reset
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's so dang addictive. And I love going to these other countries because you have amazing food, but it's not because they've added sugar to everything. It's because the food and the seasonings. You know what I mean? So
Right. It's one of the things about like through hiking is that in order to not have a huge caloric deficit, the method that we all take is we eat like a typical American. And I think that that is like so descriptive of what the American diet is like, where we're like, oh, we got to eat candy, Oreos. I
oh
love
yeah,
Oreos, so no, I'm not shaming the Oreo people out there.
they're so good, but they're so calorie dense.
Right.
So speaking about like eating and calories, when you're doing a through skate, I imagine you're basically matching calories to what you would be doing through hiking. So you're probably really trying to get calories in. But what maybe differs from a typical through hiker's diet versus what you might be eating out there? Are you into cities a lot more? So does that change how much food you're carrying? Or yeah, maybe walk us through what that might look like and the differences.
Yeah, so I keep like a core amount of food inside my pack, generally just like a couple of days, because like you said, we are kind of more into towns more frequently, just by sticking through roads. And but I keep like a couple of days worth of food inside my pack, and then it just kind of depends on what towns we hit. But I eat out way more when I'm through skating than whenever I'm through hiking, and that also helps with keeping up with the calories. If you can eat, fried chicken along the way, you're going to be doing a whole lot better than if you're eating ramen at night.
Yeah, you're not withering away per
Right?
se.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes
The
sense.
food is definitely better with through skating than it is with through hiking, but there are quite a lot of similarities.
So is that for you? Is that one of the draws to through skating, or what makes you attracted to through skating versus through hiking?
Well, I definitely like them both, but it kind of just depends on the adventure that you want to have. Actually, a lot of times when I'm through skating, if my legs start to get tired, I'll pick up the board and walk for a while. If we come across a trail, I'll hike it for a while. Um, And so it really just kind of depends on the adventure that you want. It just skating is just one of the most fun. I don't know if you skate. It's hard to have a bad day while you're skating, and so you're kind of going along. You can carve, you can listen to music, and it's just so much fun. And I love through hiking as well, but it's hard to have those kind of antics while you're just walking in a straight line.
Yeah, I don't skate, but I do. I grew up on two wheels, I guess you could say, and it's hard to have a bad day on a bicycle or a
It
motorcycle for
is.
me. You know what I mean? No
Oh,
matter what it is, I could
yeah,
be taking my kid for a 5 mile an hour ride on the dirt bike, and I'm still smiling. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
so,
Yeah.
I can understand that for sure. Um, like who invented this? Like, are you like the guy that's like put this together? I'm probably in the dark on this as far as like people that are through skating, but maybe give us just a brief history of if there is a history of through skating and how this started to come to be.
So I actually don't know who you could technically say is the first person. There's a few people that we consider like the godfathers of it. There's a guy named Paul Kent, lives up in Canada, who he started something long treks on skate decks. And they would film themselves, basically kind of skating countries. And so he's one of the big originators of it. I came to know about it through a guy named Alex Fote. And I read an article about him where he through skated the Florida Trail, and he just decided to bring it with him. He was the first guy, and I read that. And actually, at the time that I read it, I didn't know how to skateboard, but that idea just kind of stuck with me. And then years later, I ended up picking up skating, and the idea just kind of stayed with me, and decided to go and actually do the Florida Trail as well.
That's actually really surprising that like I just figured that you probably grew up skating and so it was like the most natural thing to continue to skate and try to apply that over, right? So, did you start skating to do this or was it just kind of a fun hobby or like how did you even get into skating then?
So I actually had a friend that he had a kid, and this friend and I grew up together, and I knew he was going to teach the kid how to skate. And so I was like, I want this to be an activity that we can do when this kid gets older, and it's our thing together. And so I was like, it's time to start learning. And I was 33. It was on my 33rd
Wow.
birthday that I picked up a skateboard and started skating, and then got into through skating about 2 years later.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. Yeah, I just would have assumed like from the time you're 10 years old or something, you're on a skateboard. So it's just like, no, if I'm through hiking, like I want to skate when I get to this road or something like that. So that is kind of a different approach to it, which is cool, right? Because picking it up at 33, that opens up possibilities for a lot of people that may have some interest
It
in
does,
this
yeah.
approach, right?
I was terrified of skateboarding whenever I was a kid,
Yeah,
and
I'll raise my hand to that.
right, yeah, it is scary. But actually, I think that whenever I see kids skateboarding now, now that I'm older and got into it, I'm always impressed by them because it's something. It teaches you like all these great life lessons, where you're going to fall down constantly, you're going to get hurt constantly, and you just have to keep at it. And so it teaches you to like get over problems that you're having, to be persistent. And so I think that like skating teaches you all these great things. And so I kind of wish I had picked it up when I was younger. It just
Right.
you have to get over the fear of falling, and then once you've fallen a few times, you're like, this is awful, but it's not as bad as you think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such a good point too. Like skating is difficult and not a lot of people, I guess, learn to appreciate it, you know what I mean? Because they might try once and they fall straight on their head and it's like, all right, I'm out, you know what I mean? But
Oh,
there's probably a lot of confidence built in kids and in people that stick to it and get past especially that like those first 100, 200 falls, you know what I mean?
oh, definitely. It's the same with motorcycles too. Like I think if you fall on your motorcycle, you lay it down, and you can't ride for a little while. All you're doing is thinking about riding that motorcycle, and that is how you know that you love it. Is whenever you want to go back to it, despite
Yeah.
the negativity.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, just to take it on the tangent of like kids for a second, I think, I've got a couple of kids and it's like, I don't know what it is that's going to resonate with them, but definitely like you hope that they latch onto something like that
Oh yeah.
skateboards, dirt bikes, mountain bikes. Mountain bikes getting so big, and so it's like sports, whatever it is, and just latch on and just fuel that fire, because I think anything that they can get that passionate about, like, it's gonna inherently push them and just help them grow. But so to bring this back to the topic at hand, though, it sounds like you've also done a little bit of thru hiking then.
So on the Florida Trail, I hiked about 800 miles of it and skated 300 because
Okay.
the Florida Trail has about 300 miles of road section. And so on that one, I carried the board on my pack quite a lot. And
Okay.
then, and so done a lot of that. And then I grew up in the Appalachians, so I've done a lot of the Appalachian Trail. I used to live in Colorado, so I've done almost the whole Colorado Trail.
Nice. Nice. So I imagine you're quite familiar with thru hiking then, and gear and setups and stuff like that. So what differs between what you're taking out there and what a thru hiker is taking out there as far as the gear itself goes?
Actually, between through hiking and through skating, my gear stays almost consistently the same. Obviously, like weight is a huge thing, and so I do ultralight hiking. So I'm always consistently trying to keep things under 10 pounds. But whenever I'm through skating, I'll have like a little skate tool. It's basically like keychain sized. So it's perfect for what we need out there, but it's not super efficient. And I'll maybe carry like an extra bearing. But a lot of the gear things that I need to do skating wise is just the repairs and things like that just comes before before I ever start, where everything's built to really last like thousands of miles. And so like my board actually probably has probably getting close to 2,500 miles on it now.
Wow.
And I've had to go through some wheels in that time and some bearings, but you just change them out beforehand and you're all set.
Do you have to invest more heavily into that board to get it to be ready for a trip like that? Like, like, I don't know, bring it back to mountain biking or something like that. Like, you can spend $1,000 on a mountain bike, you can spend $15,000 on a mountain bike. Like, do you have to invest in that board at a higher level to have a board that'll go 2,500 miles like that?
I think it definitely helps, but I don't think it's necessarily needed. It very much like through hiking. There's people that have the ultralight gear and change it out every 1,000 miles, something like that, and have the brand new best of everything. And then you got the guy. I don't know if you know this hiker Mega Man. He created something called the Fourth Crown, where he came up with his own long trail.
Okay.
A lot of what he uses is basically like Walmart gear, and this is like one of the best hikers out there. And so I think like it helps to have higher end gear. It helps that this board is built so well. But I've seen people out there doing it with much cheaper boards.
Yeah.
But the board that I ride, if I could mention a brand name, is
Yeah.
something called Pantheon.
Okay.
And they are all about distance and durability. And so, I think they're like the top of the tier when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like in my head, I'm thinking like the bearings, like you say, wheels and bearings have to be a huge factor in that. But what does a board weigh?
I think my board weighs probably 5 or 6 pounds, just the deck. And then once you add in wheels and everything, I think it comes to about 8 or 9 pounds.
Okay.
I have more of a conventional popsicle style deck, and that thing weighs right under 6 pounds. And so
Okay.
when you're having a hike, it's a little heavy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I honestly thought it was going to be like 10 plus. So that's better than I was thinking. Um, you mentioned though that like you're still very focused on being ultralight, and I'm curious, because let's say you're bike packing, people try to stay really light, but it seems like it's not like priority one, priority two, right? Or maybe it's priority two, but it's not priority one. Maybe things being really compact and tight is more of a priority on a bike or something like that. So, out of curiosity, what makes lightweight or the weight of things matter so much on a skateboard? Is there not as much rolling benefit, you know what I mean? Like coasting benefit as you might think, or
Right. It's very much like if you're having to carry more weight, and with the movement of your body, you're going to get tired easier. Also, when you're on the board and you've got a heavier pack, you're more top heavy. And
mm,
so you can't really like being compact actually helps me quite a lot if something does go wrong, where I could kind of maneuver a little bit more quickly. Where if I was wearing a 20-pound pack, I'm probably just going down. And
gotcha. That makes
so
sense.
it helps to not be so top heavy.
Yeah, I actually just did a YouTube video about, like, everyone talks about the weight of things, but like the bulk of things, and how having a more bulky pack, like if you just paid attention to weight but not bulk per se, like that weighs on you throughout the day, the twisting, the turning, the motions, and like I say, the falling, or the, like, so that definitely, I can see that for sure, as well. So yeah, it makes sense. When you when you think back about like the through skates that you've done, is there one in particular that really comes to mind? Maybe has like was the most epic adventure of them. Maybe it's just the one you just did, but I don't know. I'm just curious if there's one that really stands out.
I think the one that stands out the most would be New Mexico. When I was in Florida, I actually met another guy, Justin Bright, who was through skating the whole state of Florida. He did 1,100 miles on his board. And
Wow.
we didn't know each other at the time. We got introduced, and we ended up meeting up at a hiker meetup. And like the first night we met each other, we were like, we should skate something together. We were a little bit intoxicated, and so we were just kind of rambling ideas. And somehow New Mexico came up, and just like a few weeks later, we met at the border of Texas, and made our way up the state of New Mexico. It was so magical. Like it was just the most fun that I've ever had in my life. And actually, him and I barely knew each other at the time, and we just kind of took a chance on skating together. And I didn't know much about New Mexico at the time. And so we just kind of went through, had adventure after adventure, and like to the extent it's like hard to even explain to people like how much fun we were having. And we ended up coming through this little town called Madrid, New Mexico, and I found it to be like the most fun place I'd ever been. And I was living in Colorado at the time. So when we got done skating, I went back to Colorado, and a few months later ended up moving to Madrid, and that's where I live now.
Really?
Yeah, I love it, and I'm thriving there. So yeah, it was life changing going there.
Yeah. So on that trip, what was like the craziest thing that you feel like happened through that? How many miles was that one? Was that the 400 and something miles, right?
Yeah, I think we ended up doing like 485, something like that,
Yeah.
475. Um, you know, I would say it's probably just a combination of the experiences that we had. But one of the things that we got really big into was sleeping under bridges. And
Okay.
because out in the desert, out in the desert, there's just nothing around, and you're quite exposed. And the first night, or first or second night, we were skating through, and we came along the Rio Grande, and there was a bridge there, and the riverbed was completely dry. And Justin was like, we should sleep underneath this bridge tonight. And I was like, there's no way I'm sleeping under a bridge. I was totally against it. I tried to, we went back and forth for like an hour about it, and we did it, and we ended up just loving it. And so along the way, we just like tried to find bridges to sleep under, and it really just kind of made me more of a dirtbag than I already was. And so I think like just every night we were trying to find some interesting place to stay, and that was really quite nice.
Did you ever have any companions or visitors under the bridge with you?
There was one night where actually Justin woke me up, and he was like, "Hey man, I think I hear coyotes." And we're like sleeping in a riverbed. And so I grabbed my headlamp and I turned it on, and we could just see eyes like circled around us. And they're probably like 100 yards away, maybe a little closer, but it just terrified the heck out of us. But what were we gonna do? And for
Yeah.
some dumb reason, we decided to sleep inside of our food bag that night. And so we were both sleeping beside of our food bags. And in that moment, I was like, oh, this was such an awful decision. But we just kind of went back to bed. We were like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Like
Right.
we're just circled right now.
Right, right.
Obviously,
Luckily, coyotes are not as big as some of the other critters out there, but it's still
right.
like it can be tough to go back to sleep, in a situation like that for sure.
Those ominous eyes could be a little terrifying, 2 a.m.
You should just dream about them the rest of the night.
Yeah.
I mean, I have heard stories of coyotes that like are just camp robbers. Like they'll sneak in and they're not going to maybe like bother you, but they'll go for your food. Like they'll try to sneak it out if they can, and especially if they're like close to cities and roads, like they're not as scared of people, and I think they get aggressively close, trying to steal stuff out of your camp, and they're so smart, man. Coyotes are very smart, intelligent
and mischievous.
Animals, so. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about what it's like to find camp. Obviously, when you're through hiking or backpacking, you can, in a lot of places you can camp just about anywhere. But what are you guys typically looking for when you're setting up camp? How often are you right on the road or right outside of a town, or walk us through what that looks like and what's different there.
Yeah, so typically we try to stay just outside of town. And kind of the things that we look for first is a place to fill up water before we go to bed, because generally we're dry camping. And once we've established that, about an hour or two before the sun starts to set, we'll start looking for places to camp. And sometimes we'll look on the map and see what looks good. Sometimes you just kind of skate till you find something. And but generally we try to stop before the sun is finally set, especially whenever it's setting. It gets a little bit more dangerous to skate because the sun's in people's eyes. And so it makes it a little bit trickier to kind of weave through traffic. But, one of the nice things about just having your gear with you is when you find a little spot, you can just set up. We do a bit of stealth camping. And, actually, like in Puerto Rico, I think all but one night I was stealth camping. And so you just kind of look for little spots. And our Ultralight gear is quite small. And so we can just set it up wherever.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm most surprised that in Puerto Rico you didn't like go with a hammock setup or.
Yeah, I kind of regret not doing that.
Yeah.
I had thought about it, but I had like just got a new tent, and I was so committed to just trying it out, and so I was like, just bring it with you. Yeah, the hammock would have been great.
Would have been a little cooler at least most of the nights, and there's no shortage of trees down there, so.
Right.
No, I think that's it's always fascinating to learn about a new sport, a new way of doing things, and kind of relate to them, right? For you, what really draws you back to continuing to do this, right? Because you could go skate in the afternoon and like get your fill of just skating, right? Like you could just be like, all right, I'm going to skate every day for an hour after work or whatever, and get skate time in, right? But obviously you're getting pulled out there for something else, or some additional things, right? So for you, what does pull you out there to take this sport, run with it, and also be a proponent, of trying to build this sport?
I think it's just like one of the best and most ultimate ways of traveling. And I think that's what I really enjoy about it. I get, very kind of pent up in the monotony of day-to-day life. And so, like, obviously, like, we have to work, we have to, pay bills and do this and that. But I get so wound up about it. And so it's nice to work for a while and then go skating for 3 months. And I also think that you can, really see what a place is like whenever you're skating or hiking through it, because you actually have to slow down. Like we did the Natchez Trace, 444 miles through all these different states, towns, little provinces. And whenever you're driving through that, most people drive that road in about 8 to 10 hours.
Mm.
And you can't learn anything about what a community is really like when you're driving through. But whenever you're having to skate through it, you learn like what the people are like, what their businesses are like, and you really could see a place for what it is. And that's another thing that I just enjoy is just an exciting part of the adventure.
Yeah, that resonates with me. I think the ability to kind of integrate into that local culture more, right? Because if you're through hiking, you are coming through towns, but a lot of times, I mean, it's just you come in, you eat, you charge some battery banks, and you're out, right? It's
Right.
you're not seeing as much, you're not interacting with as many people, you're not seeing, you're not passing houses and going through the city as much to kind of get integrated more with the people. So, for someone who enjoys traveling and the outdoors, I can see how you're getting a little bit of a different take, and you are integrating more closely with the local people there, and just getting a better taste of that per se.
Exactly. And you are able to like talk to people in a little bit of a different way than you do when you're through hiking. A lot of times when you're through hiking, people assume you're kind of homeless, right? Unless you're in a town, and it's kind of a reflection at how we treat homeless people. But a lot of times they just won't even talk to you. But when you're on a skateboard and you're doing it, people are just like, "What the heck are you doing?" And so then you get to have a little bit more of a conversation.
Like you're a step above homeless, so now I will talk to you at least.
Right, yeah. And I think that's what I'm pushing for is that the homeless should get more skateboards, and you'll have better conversations.
That's awesome.
Right.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, if you have even some kind of a prop, you know what I mean, it takes the edge off. So skateboard will do the trick. I would imagine too, like when you're coming through towns, you have the luxury of like, I'm gonna skate over here and go to this local diner that's all the rage, versus when you're coming in on through hike, like you a lot of times you're not wanting to deviate much in that town to get to you're coming straight through. There's 3 restaurants basically on the path, and you're gonna pick between those, versus being able to be like, hey, like a mile outside of town down the road a little more, there is something worth going to, an experience,
Right.
or food or something.
Yeah, if something's 5 miles out of the way, we think of it in relativity to time of like that might be 40 minutes to an hour out of the way, but to go grab something to eat, we may do it. Where if you're hiking, that could be 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, that brings up a really good point that I meant to ask you earlier is what kind of mileage are you averaging a day? So like on that Natchez Trace Parkway, how long did that take you, and what does that average out to be a day?
So on the Natchez Trace, we were smoking on that one. We were doing about 40 plus miles a day.
Wow.
And which
Dude,
actually
like biking.
Yeah,
It's like biking mileage,
we ran into a few bikers down there that were asking us our mileage, and then we'd tell them what we were doing, and they were like, "What?" And you could actually do more. You could probably average about 50, 60 a day. But we do quite a ton of goofing off. When I was in Puerto Rico, just because of traffic and also goofing off on beaches, I was doing 15 to 20 a day. So it really kind of depends on the location, what the roads are like, pavement wise, and also what traffic's like.
So going back to that Parkway one, what does the day look like? Like, are you to get 40 miles in? Are you having to really like focus on trail time, or are you able to be like, no, we stop for like, 2 hours for lunch, or you know what I mean, or like we're not getting up early per se, or just kind of lay out like the level of intensity that it takes to hit 40 miles on that route?
So you do have to kind of keep an eye on the time and the mileage, but we really take it quite easy. We wake up generally around with the sun, and we'll kind of just lay in our tents for a while, drink coffee, and hang out. We do something we call getting our minds right, which depending on the state, we take we smoke our medicine,
Yeah.
and And so we get our minds right, and then we're ready to start skating. And, and so, you got to be prepared. And so then we start skating. We'll start out kind of slow. And actually, we generally walk for just a little bit to warm our legs up, and then we'll start skating, and then stop around lunchtime and eat, and just kind of put our legs up and hang out. And then we just stop along the way at whatever looks fun. And whenever we were on the Natchez, there was a ton of historic places. So we were always just stopping and reading signs and learning more about the area.
Yeah, I could see if you're starting your day off like that, that you would probably be less keen on like hitting a specific mileage goal, or be a little more relaxed. Like, let's stop here for a bit, right? Like, but I think that's what's cool about like being able to have a tool like that, is you can. I mean, it's all relative, it's all perspective. But I think one of the things that sometimes I can dislike with through hiking per se is it's such a massive goal and it takes so much time. That it can, depending on your personal situation or even weather, it can put some pressure on you to be pushing.
Oh yeah.
And there's good in that, right? Like I think there's a lot of good of setting big goals and just grinding towards those goals and whatnot. But I hate to like have all these, like, let's say work goals or personal life goals, be grinding, and then go out into nature and be like, grinding, right? Like that. There's kind of needs to be that yin and the yang effect here, where it's like, no, when I'm out in nature, I should be able to be relaxing and just breathing it in a little bit more. And that's one things that I do try to be conscious of that, because sometimes I find myself walking that line a little bit. Like, I've run some ultras, so I trail run quite a bit, and then fast packed. That's something that we do quite a bit. But sometimes like there's times when I love moving fast down a trail and being able to get through areas that I might not be able to get through in the time frame that I have. But there's other times where I'm like, man, like I really wish we could slow down right now. Like,
right. Actually, I used to really struggle with that. And I think that like once you get to a certain level of hiking, you start comparing yourself to other people. And you're like, if I'm not doing 30 miles in a day, like what am I even doing? And I was actually listening to a podcast, and the woman was talking about there's people sitting inside of an office right now wishing they were doing what you're doing. So why are you speeding through it? Like there was a point where you were sitting in an office wishing you were doing what you were doing. So it doesn't matter necessarily about the mileage. Like slow down and actually enjoy it, because for some people it may be your once in a lifetime trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think and for me, I think it's setting my mind right from the beginning, because if I set a goal, I can't like deviate. Like I'm just so one track to mind sometimes.
Right.
And so it's like be realistic. Like I think there's times when it makes sense to have like, maybe it's like, hey, I've really wanted to do this trail. It takes a long time. Like I need to maybe push on this trail, but then, have a different one where it's like, hey, I could go 15 miles a day or 10 miles a day and like take this really relaxed and sleep in a little in the morning and get to camp early enough to like maybe fish or hang out. You know what I mean? So I think it's important perspective for sure.
Oh, definitely.
But that still blows me away. You can get 40 miles in on a skateboard without like pushing extremely hard, like clocking every minute of the day to make that happen. So that's impressive.
That guy, Paul Kent, I was telling you about, does 60, 70 miles a day. Like that guy just kind of sticks to it. And so I think like they do something, actually it's coming up in about a month, something called an ultra marathon or an ultra skate. There we go. And it's how far can you skate within 24 hours along a racetrack, right? And there are people there that do over 300 miles in a day. And so actually there's a guy that may beat the record coming up in just a few weeks. But I think the record right now is like 312, 315 miles. And so
holy smokes. Are you talking like a NASCAR track or something, or what are you talking about?
It's done in Homestead, Florida on a which unless you're going there for the ultra skate, there's no reason to go to Homestead. I was so disappointed the first time I ever went there. But you just skate along a track there for 24 hours.
Yeah. Wow. That's 300 miles.
Yeah.
If you had asked me that, I would have said, like, after you even gave me reference to what you guys have been doing, I'd have been like, all right, most you could do 24-hour period, like 120, 140 miles, maybe something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So 300 is just insane. That's
It
insane.
is insane. There, people like urinate while they're on their boards. They, you just slow down and just let it go. Like they won't even get off for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, I've heard of that a little bit, and I mean, when you get into that level, I guess those are
Yeah.
the changes you got to make, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think there's like when we were skating the Natchez, I think that there are people that could skate that in less than 4 days. I think these guys that could turn out like 300 miles in a day. I think they could genuinely do it in less than four. And so I think it would be a great road for some people to try to race on and
Mm.
just see how fast you can do 444.
Do you skate up hills or do you hike them?
It depends on the grade. If it's just a, kind of a light grade, we'll skate up because you're still going faster than if you were walking and it's not that strenuous on your muscles. If it's pretty steep, we just get off and walk.
Okay. Yeah. That's really hard to like describe that without just seeing like, all right, this is too steep, this is not. But
If
yeah,
it's
just
just,
kind of
yeah, it has to be a real light hill and we'll
yeah,
still skate up it. Sometimes it's just nice to walk up it to, use different
break it up.
muscles.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there any other like big challenges with through skating that we haven't talked about?
Um, I would say maybe like two of them. Generally, traffic is pretty understanding. Sometimes you'll get an aggressive driver. Generally, the only thing they'll do is lay on their horn as they're going by you. And
Mm,
but 90+% of people are quite friendly, and like we'll get a lot of like really friendly honks. Also, just kind of like hiking, you're dealing with the mental aspect. If you're getting rained on, there's days where gotten rained on, the full day, or even like a couple days in a row, and you still just have to skate. And it's actually a little worse when you're skating in the rain than when you're
yeah,
hiking in the rain, because
dangerous.
your back will actually launch the water directly into your shoe. And so the whole day I put my left foot forward. It's generally just like slightly wet. And then my right foot will be just completely soaked.
Um, yeah, I imagine you're skating in shorts most of the time, right? So like,
Yeah.
it's just no. Oh man, yeah, that would be just one of those little things that probably works on you throughout the day. Like, just never get a break from water going. I remember I rode a bike. So I lived in Malaysia for a little bit, and I remember sometimes we'd have to go out and bike somewhere. This is when I was, a lot younger, and when it would rain hard, like it would rain so hard there that the everything would just start flooding essentially, and with every single pedal stroke, your foot would submerge and then come back out of the water. And it was just like so mentally taxing to just be like, this. How do
This
you
is
not
awful.
think this is the worst thing that could happen right now? But
Right.
no,
It's
awesome.
kind of like, they water torture where they'll just have, a drop of water land on your forehead like every 3 seconds. It really
Yeah.
does start to mess with you.
Right.
And generally skating is just like so much fun. But whenever you get tired and you're hungry and one of your feet is like soaking wet, it does start to get to you a little bit.
Yeah. I was expecting, I guess, to talk about traffic a little bit. That to me would feel like the thing that would be the hardest, like on me, like just being,
Right.
I don't know. Like, I think you'd have to have a great perspective to just be like, that was a friendly hunk. That wasn't like
That's where I struggled in Puerto Rico because everybody there does the one honk. So if it's good, they'll do the one honk. If it's bad, they'll do the one honk. And so somebody would go by and just honk at me, and I'd be like, I don't know if that's friendly or negative. And so, that was a little bit of a struggle. When you're skating in traffic, there's a couple of things that help us. First of all, you kind of like learn a language where you could communicate with the cars or with the drivers, where, we skate with the traffic. And so whenever they come up behind us, we're aware of them before they ever get close to us. But we'll actually skate a little bit further away from the line. And so, we'll skate on the right side of the road, but we'll actually come out more towards the middle of the lane. And what that kind of communicates to drivers is to go around us on the left, where if we're hugging the line, they'll get pretty darn close. And so you kind of learn that communication. And we'll do like hand gestures. We call it the sloth hand, where you just kind of go. And I know that people listening to this can't really see, but you make like a little sloth hand and usher people past you. And so we try to communicate in that way. But experience also helps. I could be, 3 inches from a car as it's going by me, and it won't have hardly any effect on me. I think, your heart rate goes up just slightly, but you really do just kind of get used to it.
You'd have to, because to me that sounds terrifying.
Right. And then have an exit plan. Generally we push about 3 kicks and then look behind us to see if there's a car. And so we're quite aware of what's going on. But if we see a car coming up fast that's a little too close, we'll dismount from the board. And we've had to jump off a few times and luckily never had an accident.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good to be aware of for sure from a driving perspective, but I would think that's the number one thing that would keep someone from attempting this would be the traffic aspect. So I would imagine when you're selecting a highway or whatnot, you're pretty conscious of traffic.
Right.
I mean, you kind of mentioned you not in the DR or the Puerto Rico, but usually I would imagine. And so just how bad is it? Do you get pretty good stretches of no traffic, or is it just kind of a constant factor?
It kind of depends where you're at. So like on the Natchez, we basically had very little traffic almost the whole time. Where it's a parkway, not a lot of, actually there's no commercial use. So a lot of people that are on there are going from town to town, or they're there specifically for the parkway. And so we didn't have a ton of traffic, cut to like New Mexico. If you're closer to town, you're obviously going to have more traffic. If you're out in the desert, nothing. And so you can really book some miles then if the pavement's good. And then Puerto Rico, there was like no point where I was ever going fast. I was always traveling along with cars and just had to be aware 100% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been really interesting to just see this different perspective, different sport, different way of exploring, right? I think there's a million ways to see the world, and I always love to hear about new methods, new ways, and ones that resonate with people. I think that I don't know. There's just like I think in a lot of times we talk about hiking. Hiking makes a lot of sense because for the most part, everyone can walk, and maybe not everyone can skateboard per se. But right. I think there's just a million ways to do this, and love the perspective that you've brought here. So
yeah, actually, I was listening to your podcast that you did where you were talking about like what's coming forward for 2024, and you were talking about, it was a great podcast, by the way. I love getting into the numbers, and I love it whenever you all do the ones where you talk about the specs of your gear and how you came to design them.
Yeah.
But you were talking about, in 2020, there was a kind of like a flare up of people getting into the outdoor industry because of COVID. And then, 2022 comes around, and a lot of the people that kind of got into that maybe aren't as interested, or, there's somewhat of a decline. And I think that a lot of people started like making Disneyland adventures with going into like the backwoods. Van life is one of the things that has like become that Disneyland adventure. And so I think like where people should kind of go from here is maybe don't seek out that pre-made Disneyland, like going straight to Airbnb and coming up with the adventure that everybody else has. Come up with your own thing and kind of, and you'll find more adventure that way, and you'll find more satisfaction, and you'll want to stay with it more.
Yeah, personalize it, right?
Yeah.
Where we're out here in southern Utah, I can't even begin to describe how many like glamping, Airbnb glamping locations have been built. you start driving over by, Zion National Park, and there's just like, you'll pass like full cities. You know what I mean? Like one time we were up towards like the West Rim in Zion, and I looked down and I'm like, oh, look, there's like, I was like, I don't remember, like, why is there a city right here? Right? There shouldn't be a city right here. And sure enough, it was just lighting from tents from a glamping, build out essentially. And I'm not saying that those are bad or not worth doing or anything like that. Like, I think I love to kind of experiment with everything, but if you can personalize your adventures to what you love, right?
Right.
I think you will, like, just like you said, you will stick with it, right? When whatever you fall off the board and you're still thinking about skating, right? You'll find a way to continue to do it and make it mean something to you. And I think that I like that. I like that perspective a lot.
I think you rob yourself a little bit when you do, like you were saying, like they're at that tent city. If you are there and you look to your left and you look to your right and those people are on the exact same adventure, you're not really having an adventure. You're having kind of a hotel stay at that point, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you could, like you're saying, like personalize it just a little bit, I think you'll be more connected to it. And when it comes to the outdoors, you'll be more connected to the outdoors. And then hopefully we'll start treating it a little bit better.
Yeah. Yep. I love it. I think that's a great perspective, and I hope people take that to heart. Like, make it your own hike your own hike, right? I get said a lot, I guess, and that's essentially what we're trying to reiterate here is hike your own hike and make it mean something to you. So love it.
Do your own adventure.
Yeah. And you clearly are. And so where can people follow along with your journey and what you're up to?
The only thing that I'm really on is Instagram. And so my handle is Rooptown, and that's ROOPTOWN. And so, yeah, you could follow my adventures there. And I'm trying to get better about posting more frequently. But it's kind of people never know where I'm at because I'll just kind of bounce back and forth with my post.
Sit down for the night and be like, I haven't posted this from 4 months ago. And
right. Yeah.
I get that. I'm not a consistent social media. I do like podcasts and YouTube, but it's like that's like, part of the role here. But like when it comes to like personal, man, I like my dream is to like sit down at the end of the year and like post the whole year at once and then,
right.
like check out.
I'll see you next year. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I mean, like I say, I hopped on your Instagram this morning and was just browsing around and some interesting content there. So go follow Moondog over there at Rooptown. We'll drop that in the show notes as well. And yeah. Any last words?
No, thank you for having me on. And a big fan of the design you guys are doing. And congrats on it's almost 10 years now, right?
Yeah.
And so congrats on that.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Definitely a lot of hard work from the team. And it's fun to cross off some of those milestones. Sometimes you get going with your head down, and every once in a while you get to kind of pick it up and be like, wow, a decade is it's something. So appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll let you go. Again, go follow Moondog on Instagram, and good luck on your adventures to come. Do you have an adventure planned right now? Or, I mean, you barely got back from one, but...
Yeah, actually, when I got sick, I got food poisoning in Puerto Rico, and I was actually sick for about 3 weeks. And wow. I've actually lost a ton of weight and more importantly, a ton of muscle. So now I'm kind of in the getting back into health mode, but probably going to do quite a bit of hiking. I want to do the northern New Mexico loop, and which actually starts here in Santa Fe and just goes around the northern section of New Mexico, as implied by the name, and then maybe do the Tahoe Rim Trail sometime this summer.
Yeah, that'll be a tough one to skate, that Tahoe Rim Trail.
Well, yeah.
No, I think
kidding. I'll leave the skateboard. I think you're only on it on road maybe like 10 miles or something. It'd be pretty useless.
Yeah, 200 plus mile trail, and yeah. Okay, well, I'll follow along. Good luck with those upcoming adventures, and thanks again for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that podcast. It was a very fun interview for me. I really enjoyed just getting into the weeds of what it's like to be a thru skater, and taking away some take homes, I guess you could say, for me. I'll be honest, I don't know that I will be a thru skater, but I do think it's a very cool sport. And I think there are some takeaways, right? Personalizing your adventures to you, I think is huge. And I love how Moondog brought that up right there at the end. I think that there's so much value in setting your own goals, your own expectations, and doing things your way. You know, maybe you like bike packing, maybe you like hiking, maybe you like trail running, maybe you like fast packing, maybe you like bushcrafting, right? Like it all works, right? It's all something that gets you outdoors, boosts you mentally, emotionally, physically. You know, it's a driver, and it's important. So I hope you guys take that and run with it. Obviously here, on the Live Ultralight podcast, we are powered by Outdoor Vitals, and something that is really unique, I feel like, about premium outdoor gear is it works in all scenarios. Personally, I do more than backpack, and you'll hear that, you know, throughout podcasts, but I do a lot more than backpacking actually. But the gear that I use works in so many different environments, and that's really where sometimes an investment into gear can pay off. So if you have not yet, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you rate or review this podcast. That helps us out a lot. And please share this episode if anyone you know of would be interested in this content. It just helps us get out there, help more people, and accomplish our mission to connect people to the vital outdoors. With that, we will see you guys on a future episode.